start the conference. So welcome to everybody. We organize this conference with the alumni and the association of the Students Association. The subject of our conference tonight is Power, Democracy, Citizens, and Europe Advocacy. It's a cycle of conference. We had another conference on civil society some weeks ago with some other speakers, and we are really happy today to welcome Ioana Surpateanu, to welcome Alberto Zilio, and to welcome Nick Blow, who will present them a little bit more in the moments to come. We will organize this conference in two blocks. The first part of the conference will be dedicated to our speakers to share with us some elements of their experience. We have three questions to raise to them. So we will raise one question to each of them and then change speaker. And then we will go to your question and answers for the other 30 minutes to come. So I will start to raise the first question. That would be, how would you describe a successful advocacy? Very shortly, also drawing from your experience. And can you share maybe with us one success and one concrete also failure or difficulties during your career, so that the participants tonight can better understand what is the jobs that you are doing, what is the advocacy job in the EU. And maybe I will turn to Ioana if you want to start and share with us your experience in that regard.
Of course, yes. Good evening. Great to be here. Nice to virtually meet everyone, even though I can only see a part of you. Well, part of the group. So I am Ioana Surpateanu. I am currently Chief Strategy Officer for a company, a startup, a decentralized finance startup called DIA, which stands for Decentralized Information Asset, which is an open source platform that provides access to crowd verified, reliable data. That's a very basic description. I'm happy to go into more details as the conversation progresses. Up until a month ago, I worked for Citigroup, so a very different environment. And there, my role was exclusively almost lobbying. Here, I have a different position, so I am now running the DIA Labs, which will include a lobbying angle, mostly to nurture for advocacy in the decentralized finance space, but not only so. I will be working on lobbying and advocacy and designing decentralized finance and crypto engagement strategy with the EU institutions and regulators more generically. But I will also work on female and emerging tech promotion and on the DeFi ecosystem development as part of the labs. So that's in a nutshell what I am currently doing. But like I said, up until a month ago, I was very much spending my time creating advocacy and creating strategies around advocacy and lobbying, right? So how would I describe successful lobbying? Like everything in life, it is a transaction. I look at it as an intellectual transaction between parties that finds something to extract that is commonly that is beneficial for everyone involved. I know this is abstract, but the way I like to think about it is that you cannot emphasize the ask too much or the give too much, right? So you need to arrive at a consensus with the party that you're trying to lobby, and I don't mean a political party, just the other entity, and generate an information flow that is useful for everyone involved in that conversation or in that project, right? So you cannot just go and ask for things without giving anything in return. So that's what I mean by a transaction. So it's an intellectual transaction whereby all the parties involved get some benefit, not material, just to be clear, all sorts of other benefits. Success, many. I actually worked with Alberto in the leadership of the American Chamber of Commerce to the EU. And I think there we only had successes, right, Alberto? So And there's one particular one that I have in mind during a delegation in Strasbourg, where we met with a high-profile politician whose views were very much opposing the industry views in general. And we transformed a meeting that was, from the onset, supposed to be very intense. I found a good word to describe it. We managed to neutralize the tone. We managed to come to some sort of common ground. So I think that's a successful meeting. We had a meeting with someone from the Green Party, to be more specific, but I think we ended the meeting in a good tone. Failure, I don't personally think you can really have a failure in advocacy if you construct it correctly, unless we think about Brexit. And I think all the advocacy entities that were that were in favor of Britain remaining in the European Union failed, because most companies engaged in extensive advocacy plans to prevent that from happening. And when it didn't happen, then I guess it was a cross-sector failure in that regard. But that's an extreme example, of course. So I personally don't have any failures on the advocacy front or in general. So failure is not an option.
Thank you very much, Jana, for this very interesting input. And I will turn to Nick Blow now to ask the same question. How would you describe successful advocacy shortly, based on what Jana just mentioned? And in your long career and very successful career, can you share with us some of the success or difficulties, failure, whatever we can call it, that could be interesting for the participants tonight? Thank you.
So, hi everybody, how are you doing? Thanks for having me here to share my experience from my long career. When I started, I had hair by one. But I mean, I think Iona covered a lot of it off there. And I think I actually just had my first win of the day, because I managed for the first time in the year to get myself off mute when I started speaking on Zoom, which is a win. But that for me is the first part of advocacy. It's ensuring that you get yourself heard. It's ensuring that your view, the view of in my case, my client gets heard. So I am a partner in Brunswick Group. We are a global advisory firm. We specialize in business critical issues. So we don't just do public affairs. In Brussels, where I'm a partner, we mainly do public affairs. But we work across the board, advising clients on their communications, be that to financial markets, be that around crises, be that around M&A deals and the like. So we cover advocacy in a very, very broad range. I personally have followed the very typical Brussels career path of studying European affairs, European politics, then been an intern at the European Commission, 5 years in the European Parliament as an assistant, and then the rest of a short time working for social NGOs on civil society issues and civil liberties issues, and then I moved into the private sector as an advisor. I've very rarely actually been the advocate. My clients are the advocate usually. I'm the advocate's, if you want to be flash about it and nice, consigliere. Otherwise, you could say I'm the advocate's monkey, one of the two. But you know, I provide advice. It's been a long time since I've been in the institutions on my own, pushing somebody's position for them. I'm usually with the client. These days, it's much more. I'm unfortunately finding that we spend more time in the back room and on Zooms advising people what to do, and they then go off and do it. We have less of an opportunity to do things with them. So I think successful advocacy, first of all, is getting your idea across. I really like the point that Iona made about successful advocacy is when you actually create a situation that is a win for all parties involved. More often than not, in my situation and where I look at things from them because of my job, it's often actually win something for the client, ensure that their interests are either protected or they're taken into account, or actually you create a competitive advantage for the client and they've been I guess if I think about some of my biggest wins, they've been where I've created a competitive advantage for a client. So I lobbied with a long time ago now, back in 2000 and when was it? 2000. I made a note down here. I had to go and look at the Parliament website to remind myself. But back in, I think it was back in 2006, on emissions from non-mobile machines, lawnmowers, and glamorous things, lawnmowers and chainsaws. And we managed to get amendments through the European Parliament that gave my client, a Japanese manufacturer of the time, a 5-year advantage over their American competitors. And we estimated at the time it was something like a 5 million cash benefit to the bottom line of the business over that time. We did that by pointing out to the European Parliament that what the European Commission was proposing was legislation that was way behind California. Europe was behind America. And that was our main argument to get that through. Very populist, very political. It was much better than putting a Chinese technician in front of a parliamentarian and getting them to explain how an engine works and how to stop emissions in equations for 2 hours by PowerPoint, death by PowerPoint. So that was a success. More recently, my work, and I'll stop in a minute, has become much more success oriented as well. And yet, because if you're looking at an M&A deal or an antitrust case, it's about win or lose. If your M&A deal doesn't go through, it's the end of the deal. So we work in teams on the political level, on financial markets level, with the media to ensure that the rationale, to advocate the rationale for a deal. And of course, the stakes are quite high. So for me, as a professional in this business, there's an upside to that because we get a success fee. So I just thought I'd drop that in, so where the higher the risk, so there is a material gain in comparison to that. Things that I've lost quickly, and there are very few, I admit, there are very few things that we lose because usually you're looking, particularly at European level, at compromise. But things that I've lost, you like this, the Italians on the call will like this. I lost an amendment in the European Parliament on GMO traceability because it was the day that Silvio Berlusconi in the European Parliament actually insulted the then leader of the Social Democrats, Martin Schulz. And then all the Forza Italia members left during the vote to go and have lunch with Silvio Berlusconi. We lost the vote by the exact number of Italian members who left the room. Another one was on the sales promotion regulation that was shelved by the European Commission in 2006. We've been lobbying on it for 4 years. The problem was the cultural insensitivity of my clients. They came at it from a very British way and didn't understand the bigger picture and so it got stuck in council. Sorry, I went on and on. I can talk for hours. I should leave some time for my cycling buddy Alberto to say something as well.
Thank you very much. Very interesting. And we'll switch on to Alberto to raise the same question on how you describe successful advocacy, and if you can share some of your experience and the positive and the negative sides of those.
Thank you. No, it's great to be here. And I also wanted to thank Francesco Ronchi, who connected us to and gave this opportunity also, of course, to the Sciences Po alumni and all the students that are here. So just a quick introduction to what I do. I work for a company that is called AT&T. They don't do crypto, but we are yet, but we do other stuff. We are mainly known as a US telecom company in the US, but we acquired recently 2-3 years ago a company called Time Warner that now is called Warner Media, and that's basically switched all our activities in the sense that the Warner Media represent Warner Bros, CNN, HBO, so Game of Thrones, and a lot of other much cooler things than just providing broadband to households. And that, I think, we go into this section with the third question. But when I was listening to Joanna and Nick, I think there is also very little that I can add there. But I think, you know, successful advocacy, in my opinion, is really the art of managing expectations, in the sense that you really have, first of all, to have a plan. So I consider something that is going to be successful when we are going to accomplish what the plan that we put together. That, you know, it's impossible to control the parliament or any other national parliament or the commission, but if you put together a plan or like you want to achieve a certain kind of objective, I think that is when, and you accomplish when you put together with that plan, then I think is going to be considered successful, in the sense that you represent, I would say, 3 pillars, in my opinion. The first pillar are the policymakers, so can be the institutions that you are targeting. The second part, that is let's say the media part, so, you know, all the newspapers and, let's say, the communication activities around that. And the third part, I consider the world of academics, so universities, think tanks, and all of that. So I consider something that is successful on that plan when all these 3 pillars, they're interacting together and they support each other with the same objective, I would say. Successes and failures, as I was saying before, I think, you know, it's all about managing the expectation. So big failures, I think it's difficult to have big failures if you are putting together a plan and you are able to get to the leadership the plan that you want. But of course, there are better results and worse results that sometimes they don't depend on you, or as you know, as Nick was saying, you know, it's very difficult when Silvio is insulting Martin Schulz that this is going to impact your plan. So you don't know how to manage that. But for sure, I consider very successful a recent plan that we put together. I think it was like 1.5 years ago, around the very geopolitical question around the vendor diversification that is still the case now. Very complex issue that involves China and Europe and US together. And that plan, I think it went very well. At the beginning, it was very difficult to get European Union, but also member states to accept the fact that you need to have some counterbalance to some geopolitical countries that are using companies to do some R&D and so on. And I think we have been very successful in also making sure that UK changed completely the direction on that side, thing that was impossible to think, you know, in terms of this. So yeah, that's my bit on this.
Thank you very much. And I will now raise a second question, which was, what does it mean to do advocacy in the EU compared to a national context? And I might ask maybe Nick to jump into this question if you agree. Thank you.
Sure, I'm not the best one to answer this. I know there are other people on the call who have more experience than me. I've spent my entire career more or less in Brussels, so doing EU stuff and then international stuff. But I think that the big difference is they change from place to place. Brussels in comparison, my you know, experience, which I say is not that great, is much more focused on, because of the institutional setup, is much more technical. And is very much more focused on the actual legislative proposals. The currency of influence is very much on bringing knowledge and you know, basically knowledge and understanding to the process. that's where the gap from the institutions is based around the depth of knowledge on an issue like cryptocurrencies, for example. The deal there will be to actually explain and show examples about how these things work, how the same thing with lawnmowers as I did 20 years ago. So I think that's very much the difference. And if I look at, I always used to use the comparison between Brussels and the ex-member state that I know best, which would be the UK and London, where London was always very much more campaign style advocacy around public, more public campaigns, more media oriented, and was very much based around sound bites and getting points across and causes and things like that. I think this is going to change in the UK now, because UK is going to become a rule maker for itself. And you will see that there will be a development of the advocacy business and public affairs in the Brussels style, I think, in the UK going forward. But I think that's the main difference. And again, the national cultures. Brussels is a melting pot and has seen its development of its own culture, professional culture of advocacy and public affairs, lobbying, whatever label you want to give it. But national capital is still very much based on the way that they used to do things. I think that's changing, because you have people who've been, if you like, schooled in Brussels, who've come through, who then are now going, you have a rotation between capitals and Brussels much more than you used to have. And so there's a development of a way of doing things, but I think that's the main difference.
Thank you very much. And I might then ask to Joanna the same question. What does it mean for you to do advocacy at the EU level compared to a national context? If you have some experience to share or any inputs.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for the question. I actually don't. So similar to Nick and I think Alberto as well, I only practiced lobbying in an international context via the Brussels bubble. But I think the main difference would be the fact that it is probably much more straightforward to lobby at national level, depending on your target, because you have a couple of actors involved, right? So for financial services, for instance, you just lobby the Minister of Finance, and the small ecosystem around him. Whereas at EU level, it is much more complex, because you have a multitude of institutions that are involved in creating the laws and in deciding upon the laws. So, and not only that, the actors who can create it and also destroy it in the negotiation process. And we've seen that happen many, many times. Something that was issued in a certain form and then ended up being adopted in a very different one. And that's what happens when you enter in the co-decision process between the European Parliament, the European Commission, and the Council, and you spend 4 years there, sometimes with moving parts, in the sense that you have politicians who are working on the files who change within this process. So complexity is definitely something that relates to Brussels very much, something that is specific to Brussels very much. I think, like I said, the ability to navigate all the actors in the European Union via Brussels or via the capitals as well generates a successful lobbying execution. But yeah, there are differences. I don't have anything to share personally, because like I said, I didn't do any national level advocacy, but it's probably much simpler. Plus, you get to, the politicians move at national level too, but less than they do in Brussels. I mean, in Brussels, you change the parliament changes every couple of years. The European Commission, arguably, of course, the commissioners, arguably, the digital directorate general stay the same, but then you have all the movements in the council with all the member state representation. So you have, inflows and outflows of people that you need to keep a relationship with. Whereas at national level, even if someone steps down from a high-profile function, they probably still remain relevant on the political scene. So you already have that relationship, and it's easier to maneuver it afterwards. So in my opinion, it's way easier to do advocacy and lobbying at national level than it is in Brussels.
Thank you very much, Jana. And I will turn to Alberto and I will add the next question so that because we are running a bit late. So first, what does it mean to do advocacy in the EU compared to the national context, but also what are the newest challenge for advocacy today, also related to COVID? And do you think that the new skills have to be learned for those of our participants that are studying right now? Thank you.
Thank you. So just complementing what Nick and Joanna said, I think the difference between EU and member states, first of all, if you want to lobby, you have to understand the context, the context that you are operating. So EU, as Nick was saying, you know, Brussels and Joanna, it's a bubble, as you all know. So pretty much everybody knows. It's like Washington, DC and other circles, I would say. So the way you are able to influence the institution and the world around you, in a way, if you put together a plan and you have the right things in place, it's that dimension. So it's a dimension that is smaller, more technical, but at the end of the day, you can make it work. I would say at national level, a lot of other factors are coming into place, like the company that you represent. And when you're talking about a member state, the number of jobs that your company represents in that specific member states counts a lot. If you have to negotiate with the Ministry of Finance and you have just 2,000 jobs in that country, it's a thing. If you are Amazon or someone else and provides 100,000 of jobs, it's much more difficult for a Minister of Finance to turn down a request or not. It depends. But you know, there are certain weight that are there. I'm thinking about, for example, Spain and big companies like Telefonica, that they have, let's say, an inner way of communication directly every time with the ministers and let's say with the office of the prime minister, because of the weight that they put together. On the other hand, you know, everything I think is also changing, and I go into your last question because of COVID, but I don't say also because of COVID, but in general, you know, the profession that we are having is changing in the way that I think is becoming an intersection between understanding politics a lot, and on the other way, understanding the numbers, because more and more policymakers, but in general, consultants, whoever work in the business side, you want to put together, let's say, your argument with substantive numbers that are justifying your position. And I think we are going into that direction. More data engineers, more, let's say, people that are understanding and put together charts, but at the same time, people that are understanding the politics. And I think the intersection of these two skills in particular are going to generate what is going to be the next generation of professionals in this sector. Thanks.
Thank you very much. I will turn maybe to Nick to see what you think are the newest talent for advocacy today related to COVID or other conditions right now. And do you think that new skills have to be learned based on these assessments you have?
The first thing you need to do is buy yourself a pair of blue light glasses, because if you spend your entire day looking at a screen. That's the first thing. No, but seriously, I think this will hopefully not go on forever. I think the fundamental change is that it will make advocacy easier, particularly for those of us who have clients on either from China or from the West Coast of America. I have both. Getting senior leaders from those businesses into Brussels was very difficult for meetings with people. It's now much more easily done because of working through these wonderful means that we have in front of us. One thing, because you asked us for advice for those people who are studying and thinking of a career in this area. One of the main challenges that I've had over the last 10 years and going forward is that people have, you know, joined teams that I'm on and worked with me, is to encourage them to get out from behind a screen, to actually get out and make a network. When we can get back into the European Parliament or wherever, go and actually sit in the room and listen and watch the conversation, see who's talking to each other at the back of the room, see who's in the coffee bar outside, which commission official is speaking to which MEP, get to know the people. I think it's too easy these days for people to connect on LinkedIn. It's amazing how people will connect with somebody on LinkedIn who they've never met and ask them a question. But actually, it's the physical, the 3D, it is missing. And that is key to advocacy. It's still a bubble, whether it be Washington, as Alberto said, whether it's Washington, Brussels, London, Bucharest. It's still a bubble. And advocacy is built on relationships. But I agree with Alberto that the big trend going forward is evidence-based. Most of the work I do these days demands an evidence base. It demands hard data to back it up. Be that consumer insights. I spend a lot of time in focus groups. I miss real focus groups where I could pretend I was a madman sitting behind a screen, and I actually have to do it on here now as well. But it's, you know, actually you need real evidence to take to people to inform their decision making. Sorry, Joanna, I'll stop.
No, it's fine. I think the answer to the question is I just exemplified it. So I was trying to close down a window that popped up, and I closed out Zoom. So that's one of the it represents one of the challenges that we have. And yes, the oversaturation with video calls and even dressing up for video calls. I was thinking about the absurdity of the situation today, because I want to be presentable for the audience, and at the same time, you know, I'm moving from one room to the other inside the house and choosing outfits, and that's problematic, I think, after 1 year. But I will still do it until we manage to meet in person, because it's important to preserve that elegance, I believe, in terms of interaction. But yeah, I think we're all extremely tired of video calls via whichever platform. And to those people who had anticipated that that this type of interaction, virtual interaction, will be the predominant one going forward, I think they will reassess it, and very quickly, because everyone will avoid as much as possible to spend time interacting with people in front of the screen when we get out of this pandemic, whenever that is, of course. But still, I think there will be a refocus on interacting with people in 3D, like Nick and Alberto have said.
Can I just say that this is a major challenge for democracy? And it's a major challenge for what we're talking about, the actual discussion and demos and public debates and decision making. Because I'm actually, I go for regular walks every day, usually with contacts and connections, and around the Bois de la Combe, around all the different parts of Brussels at distance, with a mask on, with a coffee, and even when it's snowing, just to get out of the house. But the point is, the institutions are using this. The institutions are using this as an excuse to shut out debate, to stop talking to the outside world. And that's across the board, not one particular institution. And that's where there's a danger. And that's why we need to continue and get back to things. So, but that's my public broadcast benefit.
Good point.
But I think it needs to be made.
Very interesting, thank you. And now we will switch to the question and answer session, and I will let Sylvia run the question and answer. And I see already that we have some interesting chat questions to share. Please, Sylvia.
Thank you very much, Frank. And thank you very much really to all of our guests. It was incredibly interesting, in particular this last part on the COVID, because it is actually also what we're experiencing as students. And we thought, well, maybe we are a bubble. No, well, not, definitely not. So the first topic we'll touch in our questions is transparency. Audrey asks if since there is a general trend both at the EU and at the national level to adopt new requirements, new legislation in terms of transparency, for example, he mentions transparency registers. If you think that this will be enough to change the perception on lobbying and on lobbyists, and in case not, what could be a game changer? So I could give the floor to Joanna, maybe.
Yes, it always surprises me still when people attach a negative connotation to lobbying. I don't think of it like that. I think of it, as I said in my initial answer, as a way to exchange information and to ensure that lawmakers are up to date with all the facts before making a decision. I tend to not focus on the so-called nefarious angle when it comes to lobbying, which is about influence and, you know, capital supported influence, etc. And we can get into a debate around how lobbying works in the US versus the European Union. To me personally, and please just use this as my personal opinion, I think the transparency register has created burden, has created additional bureaucracy, has generated, you know, the after effects that you have to deal with. And I will give you an example from my previous job. So meetings with commissioners or civil servants in the European Commission mostly, anyone can access them. So anyone, if they see that a company had a meeting with someone in the European Commission at a pretty high level, I would say. So I don't think they necessarily target meetings with assistants. So they can ask to see the minutes or the verbatim of that meeting. And we had a situation at Citi where so I was in a meeting with the CEO of our UK business as part of Citigroup, to just discuss Brexit and what the impact on the business itself, so on the Citi business, would be. And we got a request a month afterwards from some NGO that had asked for that discussion, for the verbatim of that discussion to be shared. And it created a very complex situation whereby we had to involve lawyers who redacted, because many of the information that was shared with the commission people back then was shared to ensure, to accentuate how damaging a particular, I don't know, Brexit provision would be on our business then, the Citi business, right? So we spent a month, I think, going back and forth on emails, redacting, and in the end, the minutes were released with information that was irrelevant. You had cut everything out, maybe aside from the fact that there was a meeting on a certain date. So what's the use of that? Of course, you need to have transparency, and you need to have a way that ensures, you know, that there's no dominant party that dictates how laws are made at EU level. But I'm not so sure the way the transparency register works today is the right one, or I'm not so sure that enhancing that would provide it. So yes for transparency, definitely yes for transparency. From a personal perspective, I'm not particularly a fan of the transparency register, but maybe Nick and Alberto have different opinions.
Yeah, maybe we can have their opinion then going before with Nick and then with Alberto. I would ask you to be quite short and sharpened because we have some other questions and the evening is coming. Thank you very much.
It's an unavoidable reality. I mean, I saw today that in a leak document that the future ESG reporting proposals from the Commission that we expect in a couple of months, included amongst carbon and everything else is lobbying activity. So even in mandated ESG reporting going forward, maybe in 2024, 2025, companies, private and public, will have to put their lobbying activity in their ESG report. So Yeah, I don't think it's something that we've learned to deal with. We update it every year. I was actually doing it yesterday, debating with my colleagues which band to put which clients in, and it's something that we live with. Yet the transparency of cabinet meetings, parliamentarians meetings, like you say, it can be the transparency side of it can be pretty useless, but we need to go through it. Lobbying, I think, is a dirty word, unfortunately. I don't think we're ever going to get away from that. Maybe we need to use advocacy a bit more. It's just that the company that I work for would never say that I work for until recently would have ever said that we're involved in lobbying. We do public affairs. It's all semantics, right? My ex-mother-in-law used to say I was a highly paid political prostitute, which sounded even worse.
Please, Alberto.
I like the highly paid bit. That she was wrong at that time, but anyway.
No, look, I think, regarding transparency in general, I'm not going to get into the transparency register because it's something that we have to comply with and we do every year, but I see a trend of, of in general, policymakers much more attentive and much more, let's say, ready to understand how you do certain things and how you behave as a collective company rather than just projecting your ideas. You see what I mean? So you can have a great idea, but if your company is not really supporting certain kind of values, I don't think it's going through. And this is the trend that I see. So, and I think it's positive because, it forces companies to be very, very attentive and very attentive to the communities where they are operating. And be very, regulating basically themselves and be ready to explain how they behave to policymakers in a transparent way without having specifically a register. So you do it by yourself, explaining how you perceive the business, how you perceive, the world that you are getting into, and that can be, as Nick was saying before, in another dimension, but that can also be a competitive advantage that you can have with other companies. The way you consider, for example, compliance and be compliant to certain rules can also be considered as a competitive advantage to others. So, yeah.
Thank you very much. Now we have a question that I actually also asked myself because I think both Joanna and Nick, you said that you both had experience within the parliament before coming to advocacy. And Carolina asks whether you think and how important it is to have first a direct experience in an institution and then to work for the public affairs. So if it's possible to work directly on advocacy, or if you recommend before having an experience in an institution. Maybe we can start this time from Nick.
Sure. By the way, everybody, I'm recruiting at the moment, so if anybody wants to send me a CV, please do. But that's there you go. I think it's actually, you can start just in public affairs, whether it be in consultancy or in-house or an association, but I do think that it's better to have experience of the institutions from the inside. It's also, particularly Parliament, is very good. I would say that, wouldn't I? Because I came through that route myself, but it's like working on a campus, and you get to, don't forget your career is built on your network. Going back to what I was saying earlier about the necessity of personal contact and connections. And very much so, whether it be an internship at the commission where you're with 600 or how many it is young people doing the same thing for 6 months, or whether it's in the parliament as an assistant, if you can get that experience of how the system works, but also build that network. And people who were on my traineeship at the commission with me went on to be prime ministers, went on to be ambassadors, went on to be and other lobbyists, lowly lobbyists like me, but it really helps.
Maybe we can go now to Joanna, since you had the same experience. So
yes, I have a relatively different view, in the sense that I don't think experience in a European institution is a prerequisite to be successful at a public affairs job. What I would recommend for someone who wants to join the institutions, I would actually recommend to aim high. I don't think an internship in the European Commission or the Parliament gives you the lay of the land in terms of how the system works. What was very useful to me, and just from the onset to say that I had never intended to work in politics ever. I was catapulted to Brussels from Tel Aviv, where I was doing something completely different. And I ended up in a high-profile job working for a high-profile politician, and that helped me a lot in terms of accessing the network. So had I been in a different position, I don't think the results would have been the same. So I happened to work with one of the vice presidents of the EPP group, European People's Party group, as his advisor for his vice presidential attributions. So that opened up access to the leadership of the EPP, basically, which still is the largest political group in the European Parliament. And this is how I understood how the system works. I personally don't think that you can achieve that via an internship. Yes, it's a nice to have. You can put it on your CV, but at the end of the day, you don't get the network from that position. So if the people in the audience would like to try, I would say aim for a middle to high profile job in the institutions to extract the most value out of their experience there.
And please, Alberto.
Yeah, so I have a different, let's say, background, because I'm I think the only one between us three that didn't work for any European institution. Even if I think, to some extent, I think can be an interesting starting point. But I would say my recommendation is if you want to, start to work into public affairs advocacy, whatever it is called, as Nick was saying, and Joanna, the most important thing that you carry is your network. So my suggestion is be close to politics. It can be the Parliament, the Commission, or the Council. But if you are close to the politics, it can be a specific party from your country, or a political party at European level, or a political group. That is where you are going to start creating a network. So where you start to create the network, I don't think is going to matter. Of course, better if you start from a leadership position in any group. But to be honest, I think, if you're really sure about what you want to do, I think you are going to find a way creating a network around there. So just to summarize, I don't think it's going to be a necessary requirement to start to work in an institution. It can give you maybe a little bit of knowledge, but I can also say, for example, from a lot of other friends that are working in the Parliament, it really depends to whom you work with. So if you work for a high profile MEP, it can give you a lot of access, as Joanna was saying. But if you work for a medium average MEP, you're probably going to do a lot of boring stuff. So probably 1 year is going to be enough for you to check on another new challenge. So it really depends where you land, but my suggestion is be close to politics, because this is what is going to create the next chance.
And related to this, we actually have 2 questions that ask what are your tips for young students that would like to work in the field of public affairs. someone asks if there is a magic stick for it, so to say, something that you absolutely recommend, and also what to do, how to emerge, how to make our profile emerge when looking for a first advocacy job in the so-called bubble of Brussels. Maybe this time we can start from Alberto.
I don't think there is a magic wand where you can have, you know, a top tip where you are going to get, we're going to get there. But there are, you know, skills that you can use, as I was saying before. I think understanding politics, but the real politics, not the policies. So not understanding everything that you can know about telecom or crypto or whatever, but really understanding, you know, the nuances that are happening at EU level or in your different member states is going to make an advantage. And also, as I was saying before, I think the more and more that we go ahead, I think the best thing to have is understanding data and providing data. So these two skills are going to be important. I would say a good place to start is probably companies like where Nick works at junior level, because it gives you a lot of exposure to the different sectors of business where you can understand, and you're not going to be bored for sure. You're going to do a lot of tasks and understand probably where you want to go next. At the same time, you're going to learn a lot. So, you know, I think consulting or a trade association, in my opinion, is a very good place to start.
Please, Joanna.
Yes, so what I would say to you students today, just look at my experience. It's, you know, in a very frugal way. I worked in the European Parliament, following which I worked in a financial services corporation, and now I work in decentralized finance. So the advice that I would give to you is experiment. You don't need to have a clear idea of what you want to do immediately after you graduate. Try different things. Figure out if they're consistent with your structure intellectually or otherwise. You might end up believing that politics is not necessarily for you. I have many colleagues who are, you know, have top positions in financial services companies and have studied political science, for example, right? And some might argue that that's not the profile that would lead them to that position. So my advice for you would be, just try it out. You have many years ahead of you to try it out. Yes, if you particularly want to experience the public affairs world, a trade association such as American Chamber of Commerce or Digital Europe, I'm referencing the ones in Brussels, is a good place to start. Then you understand a little bit about the dynamics in terms of advocacy and lobbying, or a consultancy, a consulting company, consultancy, or like I said, if you want to join the institutions, aim higher. But I would say just experiment and present yourself, because I think part of the question was how should we build a profile to be accepted for these types of jobs. Just identify your strengths. You would be surprised that what you think would not fit to a certain profile actually does. So figure out what your strengths are, amplify them when you build your CV, get some very good recommendation letters, and just try it out. And you might end up doing something completely different, but just try it out, figure out how it modules on your structure, like I said, and take it from there. But I wish I were in that position again, a student thinking what I want to do with my career. There were many things I would probably do differently. So consider yourselves lucky and just give it a shot.
Thank you very much, really, for this encouraging message. Nick, do you have anything to add?
Not really. All I can say is that I think what Alberto said about, I think it fits to Joanna as well, diversity. I think it's Carl Michel say, should you specialize? At the beginning, no, you shouldn't specialize. You should try all different sorts of things. I mean, consultancy, as Alberto said, is one way, because you start broad, you do lots of different things. I've done everything from beef burgers, soybeans, through to engines, through to platform regulation, you name it. You then specialize in the middle, and then when you get to my level, you start to generalize again. I'm now where I used to be 20 years ago, criticizing the hell out of my boss for not knowing what they were going to talk about when they went into a meeting, and not being able to hold a brief, and not being an expert. And I now find myself as my boss 20 years later. But you know, that's the way it tends to work. I mean, we take people, I think out of maybe 10 people in our office who are at the junior to mid-level, only 2 of those have come from the institutions, been assistants in the Parliament. We tend to take people with lots of different backgrounds. They've come maybe from NGO, from the media, from journalism, from now digital campaigning, you name it. We look at people. The same at higher up the scale. You know, I have a new colleague joined yesterday, joined from Politico. Somebody else who's coming in from being a chief of staff for a CEO out of Brussels. But we felt that their personality fitted. And the one thing that I would say that I look for, and if you're thinking about, there's been a student going straight into public affairs and like to get into consultancy, is I'm not just looking for Europe watchers. And what do I mean by a Europe watcher? I mean somebody who's only interested in what's going on in the European institutions. Yeah, I'm looking for people who are as interested in the businesses, in the business world, in the businesses of our clients, and what they actually do, and how to help them communicate and interact and advocate their positions with the European institutions. So, you know, what is it that makes Apple tick? What is it that makes McDonald's tick? What is it that makes AT&T tick? What is it? That I find myself to be more privileged these days to actually get to see the inside of some of the world's major businesses and how they work and how they function, as much as seeing how the political system works. But that's maybe because I'm a cynical whatever.
Thank you very much. Actually, if also Joanna and Alberto want to talk about the point on better to specialize or to remain quite broad and wide, at least in the very beginning.
I want to add something to my previous answer, which I think is very important. I forgot to mention it. You need to have confidence in your abilities. If you're going to operate in the couloirs of high pressure and power, then you need to be confident that what you display and how you display it is going to work. And also work on your ability to transmit a message without becoming a sycophant. And what do I mean by that? There's nothing worse when interacting with politicians than to become, I don't know if everyone knows the meaning of a sycophant. It's someone that is just always willing to please and would do everything to show that he is a humble counterparty to that conversation that would adjust and do whatever the high and mighty political personality would ask. So never display that attitude. It is always counterproductive. Now to go back to the current question, I would say start generic and figure out what you like, because you will develop your expertise organically out of a suite of topics that you will work on. You will find something that ticks, something that you like, and then you will go down the rabbit hole, as we say in crypto, and get expertise on that topic. But you need to try out different issues and different topics and different subjects to understand what it is that you'd like to know more about and become an expert in. So my advice is go generic and then find your niche.
And then our last answer from Alberto.
Look, I think it's really important to be open. So, you know, don't necessarily be fixed about a certain sector that you may like, but also let's try to experiment. You may not like working on agriculture policy, as a first thing, but you may find out that after working a little bit on that, that there is much more that it intersects with technology rather than agriculture. So also industry is becoming and is changing much faster than before. It's not so fixed. It's a lot interconnected with politics and geopolitics in general. So don't say no by a de facto sector that you think is not going to be interesting, because it may be developed very fast and you may find your niche there.
Maybe we can ask one last question that actually came to my mind, since we are talking about how to get this this career possibly after our studies, and since we are in the majority students, I think in this event, maybe you could share with us how you were recruited, or which was your path towards your first job. And maybe this time we can start from Alberto.
Very short story. I applied for an internship at that point, was with the European Telecom Association in Brussels. It's called ETNO. And I got there, and the person who was there told me, look, I think you should apply for this other job for Telecom Italia, and they took me in that office. So it's kind of a very typical, I would say, Brussels story. And then from there, it got different.
And Nick, what about you?
My first real job, or my internship at the Commission? Internship at the Commission, I wrote my master's thesis on racism and xenophobia in Europe and the far right in Europe. That was in 1991. Things have only got worse since then. And I ended up working in a unit in the European Commission on what was basically race relations, but was then called the integration of migrant workers in Eurospeak. That was before the treaty changed to have the articles on non-discrimination. My next job was in the European Parliament, and that was working for a Labour member of the European Parliament from the city in the UK with the highest percentage of residents who originated, or at least their parents originated from the Indian subcontinent. So I had a lot that I could bring to that office in what I'd done at that time. And I was also a member of the Labour Party at that point. So that's how I got that job in 1994.
And Joanna?
Yeah, so my first job, I'm not going to reference the Brussels one. My first job was at the Israeli embassy in Bucharest, following a presentation, it's similar to Nick in a way, following a presentation of my thesis on the image of the Jews in Nazi propaganda. And the Israeli ambassador was witnessing, and the embassy immediately offered me a job. And I worked with the political and economic departments for 1 year, then realized that I wanted to learn Hebrew as well as study in Israel. So I went over there for a second master's degree, following which I came back to Romania to become a diplomat. And then throughout the exam process, I took the exams. I was going to become a diplomat, and then I changed my mind because I was offered this job in Brussels, where I ended up working with the vice president of the EPP. And from there on, I spent quite a few years in the parliament. I became a mother. And so I focused on my daughter for a few years and left the professional side apart for a while. And then I applied for a job at Citi. I got it, was there for 4 years. And now I'm fully moving into crypto as of 3 weeks ago. So like I said, you never know where your career path will take you. Just be confident in your abilities, try to learn as much as you can from every given context, and experiment as much as you can.
Thank you very much, really. Just one very, very last question. I thank everybody who put the questions in the chat, and thank you very much for this Q&A that we had. Since Nick, I think before, mentioned the fact that he was recruiting at the moment, so he was...
I was hoping you were going to raise that again, because I wasn't sure.
Exactly. So
and
this
and
last point is for you.
I believe we do. I mean, we do have paid internships as well, which I think we do recruit from CNSPO. But please don't hesitate. You can find me through LinkedIn. you can find me on the internet. I think, you know, nblow@brunswickgroup.com. Just drop me a CV, drop me a line, drop me an email. I'm very happy to chat. I'm ridiculously busy because I'm doing 2 jobs at the moment, because our head of office left me in the lurch. I have to carry the can. But I will respond. You'll probably get a response from somebody called Sheena, first of all, who also used to work in the Parliament for a chairman of a committee and then worked in the Commission, etc. So, and she will look after you until it finally gets to me. But please do send me your stuff.
Could I ask you whether if you want, could share your email in the chat, or the email of Sheena? I don't know if I can.
You can share mine. Sheena will find it. I won't see it. It will get lost in my email. I won't see it. But Sheena will highlight it in yellow for me. That's what happens when you get to my age. And you have to wear glasses because you've been on Zoom all day.
Thank you very much. And I don't know about Joanna and Alberto, if there are any opportunities like this in your offices.
Well, I just started, like I said, and the crypto industry is a very different beast, so to speak. It's a very much community driven, but opportunities do arise. So if there is interest in learning about crypto and decentralized finance and joining the space at some point, yeah, please. I think you already sent my LinkedIn profile in the chat. So yeah, happy to stay in touch. And I'm currently not hiring, and our company is currently not hiring, but you never know. So
Brunswick, we do have people who do financial services and who are working on cryptos. So
yeah, I used to do that before, working from the outside, like looking in.
I mean,
it's very different.
If people want to come to us schooling first, then they can join you after.
Yeah, right. True. No, happy. Yeah, let's make a deal offline. I get it. I take it AT&T is not hiring because Alberto, you stopped to say anything.
No. Look, I think what I mean at the moment, actually, we are not taking any intern. But to be honest, I would like to have a chat offline to see whether we can develop some sort of cooperation or something. So Sylvia or whoever is in charge, we can have a discussion in the next couple of weeks and see how to develop something like that.
Definitely. Thank you very much, really. We'll keep in touch. From my side, I really thank you very much. Me personally, but also the Association of the Students of the School of Public Affairs, which I'm representing right now. And for anyone interested, you can find us on Facebook and on Instagram, just searching for AEAP.
Thank you very much also on my side for the alumni. It was great also to share some advice for our students. It's very important in those specific times in this digital world. And I wanted also to thank you very much, Francesco Ronchi, who is teaching also in Sciences Po and who provided a very good help in connecting with you. And that was very relevant. I think we're very happy with the content we were able to share. So thank you very much. And for all the people looking for the next event, we will keep in touch to invite you to the next conference. So again, Alberto, Nick, and Joanna, thank you very much for your time. We know you are very busy people, so we really greatly appreciate your time and all the inputs you shared with us. Have a good evening all, and hope to see you soon.
Thank you. Bye.
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 Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
I see Francesco was hiding in the background. I didn't know he was there.
Yes, indeed.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.
See you soon, Alberto.
See you, Nick. Thank you.